Hello everyone, and welcome to another Enhanced Edition. After a pretty long hiatus due to a bunch of evil primes, we are back with some custom stuff, because I have actually been working on these things in the interim. I just wanted last month to be entirely devoted to Nemesis primes, because, that was the whole point. And I didn't do any Nemesis customs, so yeah. But we're back now, and we are here with yet another Cyberverse Adventures Deluxe. This time, obviously, both because of the title of the video and the fact that how could you possibly mistake this for anything else, it is Cyberverse Arcee. And I am very, very happy with how this turned out. I can't say that it's necessarily better than my animated Arcee custom, because that one will always have a special place in my heart, but I really do like how this turned out, which is good because there is no way I could get this thing to be show accurate. The reason I say that is because you'll notice there are light pinks and dark pinks on this figure, in addition to the other stuff that I painted. The problem that I ran into is looking at the CGI model for reference. Pretty much all of the light pinks are supposed to be white, and all the dark pinks are dark pink. And I don't have a pink that matches this. I have a slightly darker pink, which you can see here and here. So if I wanted to make this figure as show accurate as possible, I would have to repaint virtually everything on it. I don't have the ability, I don't have the skill, I don't have the supplies necessary to do that much of a massive repaint. So instead I tried to make do with what I had by essentially painting a few areas white and a few areas the darker pink to kind of incorporate those colors into the figure so that they don't look quite as out of place when I ended up having to paint certain areas white and certain areas pink because they were supposed to be, to the model. So this is not 100% accurate because unfortunately I just don't have the ability to make it 100% accurate, but I think given what I had to work with, I did a pretty decent job. As I said though, there are definitely things that I would have liked to paint but didn't because it's just too much. And in addition to that, I also had to be mindful of what rubs against what, and I didn't want to paint things that were too much of a risk for scratching during transformation. So yeah, here we have Arcee's little hover car mode, and I did a decent amount on this. I did way more in the robot mode, which we will see. But yeah, pretty much all the white was originally this light pink. So the white along the wheel wells here, this stripe going along the top, the white around the headlights, these stripes here, painted all that. As I said before, for the darker pink, I painted this strip going along the top of the windshield, I guess, and also this strip along the back. I added some gray to these vents on the sides and did black on the rear section here. And there is definitely more that I could have painted, but again, with how this figure transforms and just the amount of coats of paint it would have required to, say, paint this entire back section white like it's supposed to be, it would have just been too much. It would have looked super streaky and it would have been just kind of a mess and it'd be easily scratched, and yeah, so liberties were taken. It's interesting how it's very Arcee but more boxy than we're used to seeing, and I like that. Especially the front here. This is a very Arcee Cybertronian car front with the stripes, the white and pink, and the grille in the front there. Unfortunately, she is pretty much not as bad as Earthrise Arcee by virtue of the fact that panels from her forearms actually form part of the car mode, so she at least has that going for her. But yeah, there's a lot of robot under there, which we will look at in more detail in a minute. But before we do that, I do actually want to do a quick comparison, not a size comparison, but a, I guess, deco comparison, because where would Arcee be without her best buddy Grimlock? I mean, I suppose arguably possibly better off in certain circumstances, but having actually seen Cyberverse, I can now appreciate both of these figures a lot more because I appreciate the characters, because I actually know the characters. I haven't quite finished Cyberverse though. As of this recording, I still have the final 2 episodes to watch, but Cyberverse is good. I'm glad I finally watched it. But anyway, yeah, here is Arcee with Grimlock. They will get up to some nonsense later, I'm sure. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, I already pretty much summed it all up. I did what I could. I wish I could have painted more, but just limitations with my own skill and abilities and the stuff that I have on hand. There's just no way I could do that. And before we move on to the robot mode, I did also do stuff with her weapon, which we'll look at in more detail later. You can kind of see a little bit there. One thing that does kind of bum me out about this is there is storage right in here, and you can plug the gun in there, but it's way too tight given all the angles involved. So it's like really difficult to get the gun out, and also with this thing being painted now, I worry way too much about scratching the paint off the top of her head or scratching the paint off the gun by plugging it in there. So instead of doing that, if I am going to store the gun in vehicle mode, I just plug it into the back there. And you don't really notice it from some angles, and it's not that intrusive in others, so that's what I do with the gun. It would be nice if it was able to store somewhere else, or possibly like peg somewhere else, but whatever. Anyway, robot mode. Here we have Cyberverse Adventures Deluxe Arcee in her robot mode, and this is where way more of my paint efforts went, as is probably plainly visible. There's so much on here, like all the white was stuff that I painted, all of the darker pink, like the darker pink, some of the light blue. There's so much that I had to add here, and there's way more that I wish I could have added, but again, limitations. But I like how this looks. I think, given my own limits in skill and resources, I feel like deciding to do that thing with like incorporating some of the white and some of the darker pink into the figure in a few spots rather than trying to repaint everything still gets the point across, and it makes those colors look like they do belong in the overall color scheme. So I'm willing to call this a success. For what I painted, I did paint the white on the feet, this pink around the foot cuffs, I guess you could say, gray around the calf vents. I added some of this blue to the lower parts of the knee here. Did the white on the thighs, the blue on the sides there. I also started doing this thing with a lot of Cyberverse figures, which I think does help a lot. I painted the ball joint stalks for the hips and shoulders black, and I also painted the socket joints around the hips black to make those joints stand out a little bit better. And I mean, it is more show accurate too. I mean, they also have like lights and stuff in there, which I did not bother painting, but I like having the black hip and shoulder and elbow joints. I think it breaks everything up a little bit, and it looks pretty cool. I probably should have done something with the knees, but I had done so much already, and I didn't want to like try and repaint this whole section where it's like, you know, it's a hinge, it's a transformation joint, it's just, there's so much moving around there that I felt like it would have been asking for trouble to paint all of that, so I just left those areas alone. I also added some black around the edges of the hips there. I could have painted this black, but I wanted to keep that gray because I kept that gray in a few other areas, so I didn't want to have to repaint all of the gray to black. And I don't have a gray dark enough to mimic that color, so that's why I went with the black in a few places. And then added some dark pink in a few places there to, again, kind of incorporate that color. Added some white around the sternum there, but left that little vent gray. I also did black around the midsection. Did white around the collar and neck. Black around the shoulders, like I said, then black, just a little bit of line of black right up above the bicep there. Then the white and the dark pink in the bicep. Did the blue on the bicep there. Did the black inside the elbow joint on both sides, though it did kind of rub away a little bit in one part. And it, as you can see, just moving that joint, it does kind of rub. I went in with a Sharpie to try and cover it up a little bit, but it's imperfect. And did the pink around the back of the hand. And lastly, for the face, if I wanted to be entirely show accurate, I should have painted her entire face white and left like the eyebrows, the eyes, and the lips as they are, but it's too small. There's just no way, and I'm not gonna repaint the lips and eyes and eyebrows, so I ended up doing a halfway thing of just painting the helmet white and leaving the face that kind of lighter pink plastic, which I think is fine. And then I also did her little blue the little Leia bun edges in blue, again, to try and make it show accurate. I definitely think the added paint helps. It was a very cool figure without it, but I prefer it with. The only thing that really bums me out about this figure is it's a little bit disappointing how almost the entire alt mode is concertinaed up on her back. but the way it slims down in the back there, it does sort of hide behind the torso, so you get a better sense of like the iconic Arcee shoulder pods and less of the rest of the junk hanging off of her, unlike Earthrise Arcee, which is like if you don't take off the back section of the car, it's just like a giant backpack. But then there's the thing that does really disappoint me about this, because like the backpack is fine, it doesn't really bother me, and she's got the heels to deal with it. But the thing that disappoints me is the way that things are designed up here. There's so much going on back here that you can't bring her arms back. Like, there's just no way. There's this bit in the way. So you can bring her arms forward, and that's just fine, but if you try to bring them back, they only go about like that. So you can have her kind of straight down, but you can't bring the arms back at all. That's my big disappointment with this figure. I really wish that the backpack didn't get in the way of her arm articulation, at least not this much, but all things considered, it definitely could have been worse. And I think it's kind of cool how this bit does have just kind of a free hinge, so it can get out of the way if you want to like move the hips around, like rotate the waist or whatever. And also the whole parts clashing thing is another reason why I didn't want to paint all of the stuff, because there's so many opportunities for things to go very badly. As for her gun, I couldn't find an example of this specific gun to pull the color scheme from. There was like a shot from an episode where she and Grimlock are fighting for, I believe they're fighting to see who gets to sacrifice themselves to save the ship. And she pulls out a gun that looks like this, but it's not exactly like this. So I ended up just kind of doing my own thing with it. So I wanted to keep the base pink color, which is how it is. And I don't think it was painted at all. I don't remember anymore. But I don't think it was painted. I think it was just this light pink. But I kept that color in a few places and then went in and did the darker pink for some accent color, some black around the blue bits to show like that kind of Cyberverse style glowing. And yeah, I think this looks pretty cool. I like this gun a lot better now, and she can hold it in her hand because it is a gun, and that's where the guns go. And that looks pretty darn cool. But I was messing around the other day, and by the other day I mean several weeks ago as of this recording, but I was messing around and was kind of like, you know, now that I'm familiar with Cyberverse Arcee, a gun this small just doesn't feel like enough. So I grabbed Siege Astrotrain's minigun, and what I ended up doing was plugging her gun into the side to make this look even bigger and add a little bit of color to it. And then put her hand around there to do like the underslung thing, which unfortunately, because of the way that this is modeled, you can't really, it doesn't go right. I wish either this junk wasn't here or this peg was longer, and I'm not going to shave that down because then that'd ruin the alt mode. So yeah, you can see it doesn't really peg in to her hand if you go underslung, and going up like this, it works, but it just doesn't feel right. So what I end up doing is having it kind of at an angle and bringing her hand around so that it kind of looks like she's holding it with two hands. And there we go. That looks fantastic. Again, this would not even be a thing that would concern me if I hadn't actually seen Cyberverse, but having seen Cyberverse, this works so much better for Arcee in my mind. And as an added bonus, I grabbed a couple of Skylink's blast effect parts and pegged them in there, and there we go. That is Cyberverse Arcee. I love this in so many ways. This is just wonderful. And because I feel kind of obligated to do this, here she is with Grimlock. Oh, that looks wonderful. That makes me happy. This is just perfect in my mind. I mean, I think the custom work helps. I definitely like what I did there. I'm proud of it, but that gun is just so perfect for her. And bringing back Grimlock, we now have the best friend adventure team back together again, and this is good. I like how these two look together. Grimlock's a little bit small, or Arcee's a little bit big, but I mean, they're both meant to be deluxes, so that's fine. I also think it's great that the two of them together are basically Seahawk. Adventure! Anyway, that is going to do it for my look at Cyberverse Adventures Deluxe Arcee, specifically the custom that I did. Like I said, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I know it could definitely have been better in terms of show accuracy, but I am a mortal person and I only have so much time and resources and skill. Given my own limitations, I think this turned out pretty darn well, and I need to pop this back down. There we go. But yeah, that's gonna do it. That is Cyberverse Adventures Deluxe Arcee custom with Astro Train's Gatling gun and Skylynx's effects parts, and I just think that looks absolutely wonderful. But whatever your thoughts on Arcee here, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you everybody for watching, and please stay fabulous.